folks, welcome back to QTube. As usual, it's been a while. Life. Enough said. But we are now finally seeing the light at the end of the tunnel in terms of work starting to ramp up again. I've started shipping props rentals out to other places. I've got a play I'm working on for Caramoo House that's going to be recorded and broadcast sometime over the summer about the Tulsa Massacre, called Greenwood, about the African-American town there that was destroyed, tragically. But that's got me looking at some period firearm stuff again. There's an opera gig that I'm not sure exactly what we're doing yet. And some SAFD renewals that I'm in talks with folks on, maybe doing the Theatrical Firearms workshop somewhere. So yeah, I've got my first shot, I got my second shot coming up. I'm looking forward to feeling like there's a little bit more stability and safety, and we can start figuring out what theater is going to be and how things are going to ramp up. I still have no idea if I'll be directing for my department next year or even what building we'll be in, but things are happening finally, and that's nice. That's nice. So, I thought I would go ahead and try and get a couple of these out again. By far, what's got the most hits and interest has been product reviews. And I kind of wish people cared as much about how to handle things and what to do with them as they did about the toys, but let's face it, apparently the toys are what it's all about. So, with that in mind, I wanted to do some side-by-side comparisons because I've been picking up some new things for Greenwood. And different versions of some of the things that I already had. So I want to compare the different versions. There's some more like semi-autos and other things that I've been getting for this, that I got over the last year for this web series I was working on. I'll maybe have some more on those later. We'll see. Who knows when that'll happen. But for today, what I want to talk about is the Webley. Now, anybody who's actually looked through all of my videos will know that I did a video while I was in Colorado at my parents' cabin about the Webley, because at the time that also gave me a chance to visit one of my father's firearms, which is an actual Webley that was handed down to him by a family friend. And it's one of the ones with a fairly common conversion to 45 ACP that may or may not be safe to actually fire that way. Sometimes they blow up on you. So what I was comparing it to at the time was this Denix, and I've got a couple of these. So Denix, for anybody who doesn't know, is a Spanish company that makes non-firing replicas of a number of different firearms. Not extremely well made. These things are, yeah, they're pop metal. They break, they wear out. But there's some things that they make that other folks just don't, like the break action coach gun, or they do a lot of Wild West stuff. They do some World War II stuff for reenactors as well, and some into Vietnam. I have some of their AK-47s. Is it better than airsoft? Better than a cheap airsoft, not better than a good airsoft. But the fact that they were designed up front to be non-firing ever helps some companies feel more comfortable using them. So this one, you do have the break action. It's super stiff. There's no ejector or anything fancy like that, but these are open cylinders, so you could load dummy rounds in this if you wanted to, which is kind of nice, but you can't in blank firing guns, now that we have a blank firing Webley. And then you can slide that across, and you can do your basic action of pulling the trigger, letting the hammer go. This one doesn't actually work in single action. I don't know if that's because the prop is not designed to, or just because this one wore out, because that's the other thing about Denix. Some of them are kind of crap. But this is meant to be a Webley Mark IV. So this has come up in a number of movies, and it's a nice period option to have if you're doing really anything in that early 1900s kind of era. There were a lot of top break revolvers, and there's not a lot of top break revolver replicas. I'll get into some more of them later. But for now, it's like, oh, you know what? The problem is this isn't very well built, and it can't do anything to fire. Now, for what we're doing in Caramoo House, it's going to be recorded, so we don't need a live sound effect. Our actors will be in lav mics, and blanks would blow those out anyway. But I have been using CO2 revolvers, both for theater and film, with some success, with a little bit of powder to get sort of a dust cloud effect when it fires. So I was like, oh, there's a CO2 Webley. Maybe it's time to go ahead and pick one of those up. I've wondered about it before. Considered it when we were doing Clue last year. We ended up going with Nagant instead. But This is the CO2 Webley. And now, it doesn't specify which version of the Webley it's supposed to be. And this is a manual here. I have to be careful because right now, my manual is also kind of covered in powder. But this is the, here we go, I gotta get this up here. G293 series is what this is. So this uses the disposable CO2 cartridges and the grip. So we've got one of those there. You can't top them off or anything the way you can with green gas, but they last a while. And they're easy to get. Now, I will say, it's not an exact match. So if you're planning on having multiple versions of something, which I like to be able to do, sometimes I want a firing version, sometimes I want a non-firing version, these are not the same size, right? It looks like it's kind of meant to be the same thing. The grip's a little bit different. But the most noticeable difference is definitely just the scale. You know, and it's not even just the barrel length. It's also like the size of the cylinder. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what that's about. And, you know, my father's real Webley is a different model, and it's also in Colorado, and I don't have exact specs on it. So I can't measure it right now to compare. But the airsoft's also heavier. You know, this is actual decent metal, and whereas the Denix is kind of chintzy metal. Both of them come with orange tips, by the way. I haven't drilled this one out. I usually pull these out. The airsoft, I broke off the bit that stuck out, but I still needed to dig out the little bit that's kind of hiding in the barrel. I'll do that later. Like I said, it's new. But this actually came with, for me at least, when I ordered it, a conversion to kits. You can use it with different size BBs. You can use it with pellets or BBs or airsoft or BBs. I forget exactly which they're designed for because, frankly, I'm not using them for that anyway. But what I do like is the fact that you have these replaceable shells means that you can fill them with that powder and get that effect. Now, check this out. The ejector action actually works on this, which is nice. So when I open it up, see how it starts pushing those shells out for me at that point? That's just nice, right? It's actually decently built. And these are our fake casings. To make sure we're focusing on them. So, you know, nice brass, but then the what would be the bullet is this kind of clear plastic. So if we're actually going to see any of these, I'll need to paint them something that looks a little bit more like lead or something. But, you know, for the camera move shot, I think they're filming all of that from what would be the audience anyway, so nothing's going to be a super close-up of someone inserting rounds. For film, yeah, I'd want to use dummy rounds that looked a little bit more realistic, but for any kind of distance, this is fine. This is fine. So just being able to drop those in, close it up, and notice how that just clicks in nice and easy. There's a little lever on the frame that pulls back that top lock and lets it break open. On the Denix, yeah, it's got the lever, but it sticks. It's not well attached, it doesn't move well, and it still doesn't quite clear the bar, so you still gotta like shove it a little bit more, which is what you saw me do a minute ago. So I have to say, in terms of build quality, I'm a big fan of this. I think it's much better. Now, the plastic grips do feel a little chintzy just because they have to be able to pop off to load it. So you're not going to be able to get nice solid grips that attach securely. So I imagine if this gets dropped or something, these grips are going to break and fall off, and you'd have to figure out a way around that. I do think that this was a great way to handle the tightening the CO2, because you've got that at the base already. Little lanyard ring works well, so that you don't have to have a hex wrench or some kind of special key like on some of the CO2 props I have to tighten that up. This can work in single action or double action, which is nice. You can lower the hammer like with a real one without it going off, which is nice. And I have one loaded up here. So what I've done to load these for now, and this was the trick we figured out working on Clue at Cleveland Playhouse. I've got just a little dot of styrofoam. You know how styrofoam, when it falls apart, it makes a mess and you get all these little bits, right? I've got one little dot kind of pushed in where the primer would be, and I've got a couple of them kind of wedged in the front. Now, what we did for Clue, because these kind of show up a bit, is we just like take a Sharpie or something and darken them up. So depending on the lighting, just so that we don't see that white styrofoam wadding kind of go right and fall out. I'll probably try and color it somehow, make it a little bit darker or something. But the nice thing is, this gives us a pretty safe way to fire. Now what I'm using for my powder, and again this was total credit to Cleveland Playhouse for this, because baby powder has been found to be mildly carcinogenic. A lot of forms of flour are potential allergens for some performers. So this is organic arrowroot powder, which I just ordered off Amazon. It is super fine powder. It is really, really light, so much finer powder than you'd find in most flours. You know, I could maybe do something like similar to this with rice flour or something, but it's not as fine a powder, so it's not going to linger in the air as long. I've also wondered about using graphite powder, because I've been experimenting with that as a part of finishing props, which maybe I'll put up in another video on Fight Designer or YouTube sometime later. But that might give us sort of a darker color, so if the light smoke ends up looking a little bit too much, showing up too much, we could darken it a little bit by mixing in some graphite powder perhaps. I don't know. There's some experimentation that can happen here. But I've got one more round loaded up, so let's go ahead and take a look at that. Uh-oh. That's not good. I just put the CO2 in this not long ago at all. I only fired 1 or 2 shots. So this does not bode well. So I guess what that implies is that this has a CO2 leak. So I inserted this probably like 2 hours ago, and it's, I guess, already empty. So what I might need to do is try oiling the heck out of it and seeing if that works. Alright, so stay tuned, because what I'm going to probably have to do is try oiling the heck out of it, see if that fixes the problem, and if it continues to work then. Because if not, I might have to send this back. And it might just mean that it's got a leak. But in the meantime, what I'll do is I'll drop in the clip from the test that I did earlier today, and we can check that out. Bam! Let's try again. I have now a new thing of CO2 in here and some silicone oil on the nozzle. So we'll see if that works any better than the previous one did. So I'm sure we'll be able to get the first shot out, and I'll test it later today to see if it still actually works. It holds it. So I'm screwing this in. I do hear a slight leak. Yeah, I can hear a slow leak in there. But let's check the effect. A bit of a poof. Yeah, I can hear a slight leak in there. Well, I'll check it in a few hours and see how it goes. All right, this is about half an hour later. Still fires. All right, been about 5 hours now. And nothing. So yes, definitely leaking CO2. Actually, grip feels a little bit cold still. So I'm not sure if it's fixable or not. So, you know, it's nothing earth-shattering, but it's something. And if we want to convey the impression that the gun is firing and not have anything that's going to be a real safety issue, or a loud noise that's going to have problems for mics or whatever, that's probably about as good as we're going to get right now. I don't have a model gun version that'll fire PFC caps or anything like that, which would be like, I guess, the more ideal, but this is probably as good as we're going to get. So I just got to see if I can fix that leak. Stay tuned, because probably the next one I'll do will be comparing the Umarax Legends CO2 lever action revolver with the Bruni 8mm blank firing lever action Winchester, not revolver, rifle. So stay tuned, because I'll bring you up to date on that on my next video, which is probably going to be comparing the Umarax Legends lever action Winchester with the Bruni 8mm blank firing lever action Winchester rifle, and to see how those compare both in aesthetics and build quality, and what you can do with them. So that'll be up next. In the meantime, stay safe, look good, have fun, stay sane, and I'll see you next time. Don't forget to like, subscribe, ask questions, all that down below. Thanks.